Hello friends, AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink, back with some more Christmas cards. I could not resist playing with some hot foil and the Trinity Stamps foiled pine cut and foil die set that I showed in their in the release and review video I posted before this one. I switched things around. I had other things planned, but then I was like, I need to make some Christmas trees. So I have my Spellbinders Glimmer hot foil system. It was already ready to go, and I put the hot foil plate on it, and I am using Viridian green Glimmer foil from Spellbinders. So I trimmed that down to about the size of the tree. I got the tree on there, plate facing up, got the timer going, and then I'm going to place the foil with the pretty side of the foil touching the plate. And then I'm just using some green apple cardstock from Simon. I think that's what I used. Yes. And then the two shims that come with the machine. And then I run this slowly through my Platinum 6 die cut machine. So after running it through, remove the paper, peel off the foil, and I was like, yes. It's like, it's fabulous. Let's do this again. So I've been experimenting lately with just seeing what works for me. So I took the plate off the machine before heating it up again because I didn't want to overheat the plate. I find that at times I feel like some of my plates, in a sense, overheat. And when they start getting just too hot, they don't foil as well. But this might all be in my head, you know? So, like I said, I'm just experimenting. I think a lot of times you can just leave it on there and it'll be fine, really. But who knows? So I heated it up a second time, did the exact same process, ran it through, and foiled it. And I was going to stop here. I was just going to make the two cards. But I was like, I've been having really good luck with foiling. So let's try the solid hot foil plate. This I have struggled the most with. There's many ways to use it. This is a PinkFresh solid hot foil plate. A few brands have them. And this just enables you to use the leftover foil pieces. And sometimes it helps to heat this plate up twice. So like you press the timer, let it heat up, turn everything off, and then do it a second time because it is a large plate. But I found this time I was like, it seems pretty good and hot. So the other thing I did was I taped the leftover foil, that I'd use for the trees to my cardstock. And I'm just using Hammermill smooth white cardstock. And I taped it in place with some Spellbinders tape to make sure there's no wrinkles, because that happens a lot, especially with the big solid plate, is not noticing that the foil has wrinkled when you lay it down and the cardstock on top of it. So I taped it in place. And then, I did the same thing. I put it with the pretty side of the foil facing the plate with that cardstock. And this I ran back and forth through my machine. I wouldn't do this with other, like the regular foiling, because it can shift, if you know what I mean. But this is fine. So because there's tape on that piece, the hot foil plate basically fuses the tape of the cardstock. I'm fine with that. I just wanted to mention it though, because depending on what you're doing, that could like ruin the look. But with this, I just wanted the tape to hold it in place because I'm going to die cut it with the coordinating die. So I'm not worried about the edges, anything. I just wanted to see if I could get it to foil decently, and it did. And I was so happy. I really love how the leftover foil turned out because of the white cardstock in the backing. And then the bright green of the foil. I was like, this is fun. Let's do this again. Let's see if I can get, 2 impressions because you never know. So I did the same thing because this seemed to work. So I taped the foil to my cardstock, just like so. And I tried to use like really small pieces, even smaller pieces of the tape this time, because again, like it's just the heat. Like this, when you work with these big solid foil plates, like they do get hot. So be even extra careful with these. So I did the same thing. I had the plate on there. I pressed the timer, made sure, it was good and hot. Once the timer lit up to solid green, I'm going to do the same thing, pull it off, put the foiled piece there, pretty side of the foil is facing the plate, and then the two shims, or like the shim and the plate that come with the machine, and then slowly run that through, and I'll run it back again. And again, it worked. I was so happy. So happy. This is so much fun. I have just been loving the hot foiling. So again, it took a second to kind of peel it away because this plate is hot and that tape was just like fused to it, but whatever. Like once I got it off of there, we're good to go. And then the other thing I like to do, because again, this plate is heavy and it's very hot, is just like I showed there on screen. That's how I get it off. Rather than trying to use the magnets and different things, I just flip it over onto the silicone mat that comes with the Glimmer machine so that that plate can cool off. So again, peel off the tape, and then peel off the backing on this foiled piece. So instead of making 2 cards, I can now make 4. So I'll have 2 solid foiled trees and then the 2 that I foiled onto the lighter green cardstock. And again, these were just fun, like so fun. So I've got all my trees. For my sentiments, I'm using the Simply Sentimental Holidays stamp set and the coordinating wafer die set. There's this smaller like script holidays word. And then I'm going to have the little happy stamp. And just to keep things consistent, I just took a scrap of white cardstock and I directly applied ink to it. I'm using Simon's Lucky ink for this. I thought just a good green that was similar to the foil I used. So you could use black ink or like, black cardstock, black ink, things like that. I was in a green mood. Why not, So I applied the ink directly to that cardstock. I'm going to let that dry. I took another piece of white cardstock, put that in my MISTI, lined up the script holidays image, and then I'm going to ink that up with that same ink, and I'm going to stamp it, and then I'm going to keep shifting the cardstock up so I can stamp this multiple times because I'm going to make 4 cards. So I need 4 sentiments. So I just shift it up, ink up, stamp, and just keep repeating the process. I don't need to worry about anything lined up or the space between because there's a coordinating wafer die for this word, so I'm just going to die cut it. So I did that with the holidays word 4 times. And then off camera, I just used the coordinating little wafer die and die cut that. And then the little strip of cardstock that I had applied the green ink to, off camera, I blasted it with my heat tool to make sure it was dry. And then I'm going to use my anti-static powder tool. And I'm going to do the same thing I did with green, except this time I'm using clear embossing ink. So I use my anti-static powder tool. And then I'm going to stamp the word with clear embossing ink. And then same thing. I'm just going to keep moving this piece of cardstock up so I can stamp it 4 times. And again, not worried about the spacing, as long as they're far enough apart because I'm just going to trim them apart with my paper cutter. So I coated those with white embossing powder. And I hadn't actually dried this piece of cardstock as much as I thought. So I just took a little paintbrush and just brushed off the little bits of embossing powder that were still wanting to cling to that green ink. And then once I was happy with it, I'm going to melt this with my heat tool. Once this is melted, I will just use my paper trimmer to trim these into little strips and just eyeballing it. I could have used one of my sentiment label wafer dies that I always forget about. I don't know why. They're so handy. And they're more consistent, because you get an even shape. Because I used to be so much better at eyeballing things, but as I get older and all the things, I've said this a million times. Anyway, still works. Trim those down. I'd also die cut just scraps of white cardstock with that little holidays wafer die so I could stack these together to give it some dimension. So this is always why I keep all my scraps because they come in so handy for all the things. So I'd stacked all those sentiments together, set them aside. And now I've got the insides of my card bases. My card bases are going to be top folding A2 sized white note cards. So I've got the inside of the card here in my MISTI, and I lined up more sentiments from that same Simply Sentimental Holidays set. So I got those all lined up. And then inking those up with that same lucky green ink, and then repeated the process. Stamp the insides of all 4 cards, and then I'm going to reinforce the score line and fold them all shut. And then I'd also run through some pieces of A2 size cardstock with Trinity Stamps ARGYLE Stitch background wafer die, which doesn't cut. It just adds like that stitching detail, which I love. It just gives it a little extra texture without, getting too busy because I'm going to have enough that I throw on these cards. So I did that with 4 pieces of white cardstock. I adhered them to the fronts of all of these note cards. And then I just stacked these underneath my MISTI. The very first one I managed to smear green ink on. But I'm not going to worry about that because it's going to get covered by a tree. So stack those under my Misty so that the glue could dry. Just use craft tacky glue to adhere these to all of my card fronts. Technically, you could almost just run that Argyle stitch background through with the actual card base itself, but I prefer doing it separately because then it keeps the inside of the card smooth because, you know, all that piercing detail and the texture from the cutting plates. But whatever, you know, whatever works. So like I said, I wasn't worried about the smear of green ink, whether or not it shows up on camera. Got completely covered up by these trees, which take up a full A2 card, as you can see. So I adhered the trees to the card fronts. Once I've got those adhered into place, I'm going to adhere my sentiments. The stacked holidays words, I just adhered again with craft tacky glue. And then the little happy sentiments, those I'm going to pop up with some of that Trinity stamps foam strips. So adhered those into place with that. And these foam strips are fairly thick, so it kind of popped up the happy a little more than I would normally do. But I'm adding a ton of bling to these, so it's not going to matter. There's going to be a ton of dimension. So once I had those adhered, bling. I did a video on my sequin storage. I will link to it at the end of this one because I did this years ago. But these trays, this is what I use. And yeah, have for years. And I'm not kidding. Like, this is one of several trays at this point. I have a lot of bling. So this is my Trinity Stamps tray. And I had a hard time deciding what bling to use. But in the end, I decided to go with all of these like rhinestone type embellishments. And on camera, they're very washed out in a sense. In real life, you can see the color. It's still subtle because all of these gems are transparent. Use whatever floats your boat. You know, like the pearls would look beautiful and they would stand out a little more. Confetti would look amazing. Like I was thinking you could go traditional and do like metallic red and gold and silver confetti. Like the sky's the limit. Like after I did these, I was like, oh man, I could make so many more and use different types of bling because I literally have a bajillion types. But I stuck with these for these cards. Took some time to just sprinkle them throughout all of these trees, and it was fun, you know, decorating these trees with bling. And like the whole time, literally I was like, ooh, these would look good with the pearls, these would look good with this, these would look good with this. Like I could make hundreds of these cards. Honestly, I would run out of cardstock before I run out of bling, and I'd run out of foil before I run out of bling. But anyway, I adhered them all into place with dabs of craft tacky glue. The first three went great. And for whatever reason, with the fourth one, I tilted it as I picked it up because, you know, it's just a habit to like tilt everything in the light and see the shiny. And I did that before adhering it. So I knocked all of them off. I just include that in the video because people have made comments about that. Yeah, I do stuff like this all the time, you know, and smear ink and wreck things and all of that stuff. But the magic of editing is usually I can just remove it, you know, edit it out, or figure out a way around it. So adhere those into place. And then of course all the trees needed a little topper. So I pulled out, I just have these Tim Holtz Ideology mirrored stars, which were perfect. So those I've been hoarding for since last year. So I adhered those to the tops of each tree. You could always end here. Am I going to? No. Like, are you kidding? I pulled out the Shimmer and Shine confetti. This is the ones that are completely flat. They have no raised edges. For just cause. I was like, why not? You know, they're shimmery and pretty, and I've already thrown the kitchen sink at these. And let's make the background like zhuzh it up a little more too, because why not? So I sprinkled this around all these cards and then adhered that into place with the craft tacky glue. No rhyme or reason, was not following any rules. I think that was also why I really enjoyed this. Like I wasn't worrying about like odd numbers and triangle shapes and all that stuff when it comes to adhering bling. More often than not, I don't even think about that. With the trees themselves, did not even, because you're just throwing out like you would, well, like I would normally, just throw it on the tree, you know? So I adhered all that bling into place. So these cards are legit covered in bling. The only thing I didn't do was splatter, and I know someone's going to mention it, but I think I put enough on these. Splatter would have been great. Splatter is a little harder to dry though on top of foil. That's usually why I kind of avoid it depending on what I'm doing. But it's the thought that counts. I thought about splatter, you know, and instead I added the shimmer and shine confetti. So anyway, that was the cards for this video. As always, I will have a link below the video to my blog post. I will link to all the supplies I used. I even linked to all of the bling I used. I wasn't even going to because I was like, I used a lot, but I was able to get the links to everything, and I was like, why not? And besides, the links on my blog look pretty because they're picture links, so you can see the pictures of the bling, and I was like, they're so pretty. So anyway, all that info will be below if you are interested. Thank you all so much for watching, thumbs upping, commenting, subscribe if you haven't, and I will see you all very soon in the next video. Bye.